RaaS allows these banks for the same transaction to make an additional 25%. They don't have to go through 2, 3, 4-year regulatory process just to get licensed in the send country to start operations. They can hit the ground running, right? Like it's instant.
Yeah.
It's that simple. All these banking executives are thinking, hang on, that's brilliant. That solves my problem. My regulatory headache is gone completely.
Yeah.
I can ride on their license in that send market. By partnering with this software company and with this RaaS provider, I'm suddenly present in 30 European countries.
And they can test it out without the heavy upfront burden.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, then they can move on to a different market. Hi everyone, and welcome to the IPR podcast, where we talk about payments and remittances, what's changing, what's coming next, and what it means for you. My name's Natalie Perkins, Marketing Manager at Remit1, and I'm joined today with my colleague Amit Abedi, our CMO. So this year, something has shifted in our industry. Money transfer companies and banks are no longer asking if they should expand across the border, they're asking how. How to move faster, how to reduce the regulatory friction, and how to avoid locking themselves into a multi-year commitment. Now, these questions are particularly timely this month, as the UK regulator has just announced plans for a fast-track licensing regime. And this essentially means that some fintechs will be able to operate on a provisional basis while waiting for full licensing approval. That's a very clear signal from the UK regulator, but it doesn't remove all of the complexities. And that's why one model in particular keeps coming up when we speak to fintechs and banks, and that is RaaS, Remittance-as-a-service. So we talked about this briefly on our last episode, but today we're going to go a lot deeper. What does this mean in practice? Why are banks paying attention to it now? And how does this change your strategy as the regulation keeps changing? So, Amit, thank you for joining me on the podcast today to get into this topic.
Thank you. Pleasure.
So, Amit, why do you think fintechs and banks are rethinking how they should be expanding across border?
Great question. Thank you. So the banks are, like any other company in the world right now, facing various challenges and pressures. In the fintech space, in the financial services space, banks are under pressure to make more money, generate more revenue, stay compliant at the same time, and plan for business growth in new markets through new channels. So I would say there are 4 factors that banks have looked at now. Number 1 is the revenue angle. Banks need to make money. They have an established customer base. The ideal scenario is for them to make more money from the same customer base, because if you want to go after new customers, there's something called customer acquisition cost. But if you eliminate the customer acquisition cost because you already have an established brand and established customer base, then you're golden. So the RaaS solution offers these banks an opportunity to generate more money from their existing customers. How? Because these existing customers receive transactions. So the way the transaction flow works is just very simple example. Let's say a customer sends from country A to country B, $100. Typical service charge that an MTO would charge the customer is $10. That $10, 25% of that $10 goes to the send agent. 50% is kept by the licensed entity, the MTO, in the send country, and 25% is taken by the banks. So the banks are only making 25% of the $10 for that one transaction. RaaS allows these banks for the same transaction to make an additional 25% on the send side, because the banks themselves can be the send agent in the RaaS setup. So from a revenue perspective, it makes sense for banks to tap into this revenue pool, right? From a regulatory angle, RaaS simplifies things for the banks. They don't have to go through 2, 3, 4-year regulatory process just to get licensed in the send country to start operations. with RaaS, they can hit the ground running, right? Like it's instant.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
It's a huge upfront commitment that they have to make.
Yeah. So if they were to go and down the regulatory route themselves, then they have to wait for years. They have to spend time, money, hire staff in the send country where they want to send money from.
Yeah.
But with RaaS, that heavy lifting is being done by a licensed entity already. So they don't have to worry about that. So they can. So it's about speed to
speed to market.
Speed to market.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and of course you're saving a lot of costs because most of the compliance costs are being handled by the licensed entity.
Yeah, absolutely.
So of course the bank is not making the entire 100% of the commission, but still right now they're making 25%. With RaaS they can make 50%. And the other 50 will go to, obviously, the licensed entity in the send market.
Yeah.
So we did revenue, we did regulation, then there is growth. RaaS allows banks to realize rapid business growth in new markets, right? Because they are the brand. They don't have to rely on a third-party brand. They can promote themselves because at the end of the day, the customers in the send markets who will be sending money, they will recognize the bank's brand because they're sending, it's their local bank, except that it's not in the destination country only, it's actually in the send country now. So people have a tendency to be loyal to their own home country brands. So immediately you have this case for rapid business growth.
Absolutely, yeah. And what about the fintechs?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I would split fintechs into two categories, right? You have fintech companies in different regions, and they might be well-established brands in the cross-border payment space. Now, let's say, for example, there's a fintech, well-known fintech stroke MTO in Singapore, and they are sending money to West Africa, for example. So this fintech in Singapore already has established relationships with West African payout banks and partners. Now with RaaS, they can immediately conquer Europe. They can take their brand, export their brand from Singapore to Europe now, have an instant presence in 30 European countries, and start sending money from those 30 European countries instantly to their existing payout partners in West Africa.
Yeah, because they've got that payout infrastructure set up.
Yeah.
And it's just a case of starting in a new send market.
Exactly.
And for them, it's about the speed.
It's the speed.
Yeah.
It's operational efficiency, speed to market, rapid tapping into the established customer pool that they have.
Yeah.
Right?
And for those that are hearing the term RaaS, Remittances-as-a-service, for the first time, could you just give us a brief explanation of like what it is?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful.
So RaaS stands for Remittance-as-a-service, in short. You have many fintechs in the payment space now using buzzwords like banking as a service, right? And of course, the ubiquitous SaaS, software as a service. So you have RaaS. Now, just to explain what RaaS is all about, historically, if I want to set up a fintech company that specializes in sending money from UK to India, for example, I would have to go to my central bank in the UK, apply for a license, a money transfer license. I would then need to get a bank account to handle the customer funds because I'm collecting funds from the Indian diaspora living in the UK into a bank account that has to be segregated. And then I have to send those funds to my partner bank in India that's going to distribute those funds to the beneficiaries. This process can take months, if not years.
Yeah.
And this is just to get a license. The regulators are getting stricter by the day. It's very hard to get a license nowadays. In most countries, in most send countries, it's very difficult. In the sense that there's a huge checklist. You have to fulfill a lot of criteria. There's some easy jurisdictions, relatively speaking, but overall, it's not a very straightforward way to get operational.
Yeah.
Then you have to think about hiring a full-time compliance officer, having an operations manager. These are upfront costs.
Yeah.
Then and the biggest challenge is to get a bank account. and in the send country. In the UK, for example, if I'm a newly set up money transfer operator, it's very difficult for me to get a bank account. Of course, there are now solutions coming up now. However, this process can take a lot of time, and I have to do all the heavy lifting. Now, if I'm a fintech and I want to move fast, everything has to move swiftly nowadays, right? I can actually replace all this headache simply by partnering with a RaaS provider. A RaaS provider is a licensed entity. It's a money transfer operator. It has the same license in the UK in this example.
Yeah.
But it's agreed to do the heavy lifting for me as a fintech company. So the licensed entity, the RaaS provider, they have a bank account, they have the license, and I will just establish a partnership with them, and I will ride on their license.
Got it. Yeah.
Right? And they're not competing with me because they're B2B. They're from their business to me as a business. It's B2B. I am B2C. I am communicating with the end customer. So the RaaS provider is happy. I'm happy. I don't have to worry about the heavy lifting, the compliance, the regulation, the upfront staff costs. I don't have to worry about all that. All I do is I focus on getting my customers onboarded.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And technology plays a crucial role here.
Right.
So none of this is possible without technology. So you need a RaaS partner, you need a RaaS provider, but you also need a software provider, a software partner, like Remit1, for example. So that's where we come in, and then we help facilitate these relationships between the fintechs and these RaaS providers.
Yeah.
Now, that's one category of fintechs. The second category of fintechs are startups. They are completely new to the money transfer space. They might be doing something else like e-commerce. They have their customer base in the e-commerce space, but now they want to launch a new product called money transfers. So they're new to the money transfer space. So again, they can go and sign up with a RaaS partner and launch this service instantly, because they already have a product portfolio of services that they're catering to for their customers. They just enable a new service called money transfer. And now they've got this. They already have a customer base, and now they have access to a new send market instantly through RaaS. So
that's another use case of like companies that may want to use this model.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And why do you think, I know you've been having a lot of conversation with banks and fintechs this year, and there just seems to be a lot more interest in it. What do you think is driving that?
It's the market conditions, of course, globally. The geopolitical landscape, the macroeconomic factors are all, contributing to this. The fintech space, there's a lot of competition, yet it's also a very thriving space. There's a lot of innovation, and banks have realized that they have something very valuable, but they're not really tapping into the full
transaction flow.
Transaction flow.
Yeah.
And they see RaaS as a means to tap into that customer pool and generate extra revenue from their existing customers, as I explained earlier.
Yeah.
So I think social media has a big role to play here, because social media channels, especially LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and the like, social media has played and is playing a big role in bringing about this awareness to these banks and fintechs and MTOs that, look, guys, all the challenges that you've been facing for the last so many years, decades, I should say, there are solutions, Now we have those solutions. Those solutions are available. It's very easy for us to address those concerns, the challenges, and you can be up and running in new markets very quickly. If you have an established customer base, come to us and we will give you a solution.
Yeah.
And off we go. So that is exactly why social media, YouTube, LinkedIn, Snapchat, and other social media channels are being.
So you think it's like an educational piece, really?
It's an educational piece. Very good. Yeah.
Around the model.
So through these social media channels, there's a lot of education happening. The banking executives, you can pretty much find any banking executive on LinkedIn, for example. And there are lots of educational videos being pushed out by software providers like Remittances, like we do, for example, and our competitors, And of course, with RaaS providers themselves, they're promoting their services on LinkedIn. So all these banking executives are thinking, hang on, that's brilliant. That solves my problem. My regulatory headache is gone completely. I can ride on their license in that send market. I am present in Nigeria, for example. I've got 3,500 branches in Nigeria. I don't have one branch in Europe. But by partnering with this software company and with this RaaS provider, I'm suddenly present in 30 European countries. So it's brilliant. So education is happening. There's a lot of education happening through social media channels, also in media as well. Banks and fintechs, they are becoming more aware that all the challenges that they faced over the years are now being addressed by solution providers.
So Amit, obviously we've heard this month from the UK regulator that they're planning to announce this fast-track licensing regime. This is quite big news in the industry, but where does that leave RaaS in the mix?
Yeah, sure. Some background, if we can,
sure.
Time permits. Prior to COVID, if I remember correctly, there were about 1,800 roughly payment institutions in UK and Europe together, out of which roughly 1,400 were in the UK and 400 were in rest of Europe, the European countries, right? So you can see how biased it was in favor of the UK. The UK regulator was very, relative to other regulators, was very customer friendly or MTO friendly, we say. So we had, and everybody, obviously the allure of the UK, everybody wanted to have a presence in the UK, no matter where you operate from. So the UK regulators, they made it possible for fintechs to launch successful businesses from the UK. After Brexit, things changed, and then came COVID, and right after COVID, the regulator became really strict, understandably so, for various reasons. Of course, we don't have to get into those into the specifics, but the regulators became very, very strict in terms of stats. Remit One, we used to help a lot of MTOs get licensed in the UK, for example, before COVID. Our success rate was 95+%, i.e., we were successful in getting 95% of our clients, new clients, get licensed by the UK regulator. After COVID, the success rate fell to 9%. So you can see how strict the regulator became after COVID, and again, for valid reasons, but then that means that the economy took a big hit. Especially the money transfer sector took a big hit. So now I think the regulator wants to just be more amenable, more friendly to the MTOs again, so that it attracts more business, more international fintechs to come to the UK and launch their services quickly. Now the question is, how does this is a direct licensing approach. Compare that to RaaS. What's the difference? Well, there's a big difference. RaaS providers are not keen on working with small companies, small fintechs. RaaS providers will work with large banks because, remember, the RaaS providers are sharing their license and bank account. So it's a big responsibility. So they have to be risk averse. So they will only onboard you if you're a big bank from a receiving country, or you are an established MTO from some country. So they're okay with that. But when it comes to a small company, a startup, they're not going to onboard a startup. I don't think, at least, that they will. I don't think they will onboard a startup readily. So what option does the startup fintech have to go down the direct license route? And that's where this new expedited FCA
licensing regime. So to summarize, it's the fast track licensing regime is really for those smaller fintech startups.
Yes. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and the RaaS model is much more focused towards the banks and the larger financial fintechs, established fintechs. Okay, and when banks and large fintechs are thinking about practically like how is this going to work, what does the onboarding process look like?
There are typically 4 to 5 players in this equation. Okay, so we can go through each entity. Entity number 1 is the RaaS provider. Entity number 2 is the company, let's say, or the fintech or the bank that wants to take advantage of the RaaS provider services. Entity number 3 is the software provider that glues everything together. Yeah. And then there are a few other entities, but just to keep things simple, the onboarding. So the onboarding process is as follows: the company, and this company could be a fintech or a bank or an MTO, would contract with the RaaS provider in the send market. They would sign a contract together. And basically what this means is that the end customers, the remitters or the senders, the individual who want to send money, they are going to be not only the customers of the company, but they also need to be onboarded by the RaaS provider. Yeah. So the onboarding of the end customers happens first on the company software platform, and then they will be onboarded by the RaaS provider, because the RaaS provider is a licensed entity. And then the transactions have to be sent to the company's payout side. So we're just trying to keep things simple, and so we're just talking about 3 entities here.
Yeah.
The we're actually talking about 4 entities, sorry. So the company in the send market, the RaaS provider in the send market, the company in the receiving market, and the software provider that glues all the 3-4 entities together. Okay? So this is the onboarding process.
Okay, and what about the fund flow and the data flow for a transaction?
Yeah, so we have to make a distinction here between a fund flow of a transaction and a data flow of a transaction. 2 distinct things. Fund flow is, we'll create a scenario. We'll try and keep the scenario as simple as possible. There are 4 entities involved. Entity number 1 is the company, and this company could be an MTO or a bank or a fintech. Entity number 2 is a RaaS provider. Entity number 3 is the company again in the payout market, right? And entity number 4 is a software provider like Remit1 that glues all this together, right? So entity number 1, the company, this is in the US, for example, as an example, and the RaaS provider is in the US as well in this example. And then entity number 3 is the company in Nigeria, for example. So an entity number 4 is the software provider, okay, like Remit1. Now, what's happening is, in terms of the fund flow, entity number 1, which is the company in the US, has the customer base. They have the diaspora. They will create transactions to send money to Nigeria from the US, right? So the funds will flow from the bank accounts of the customers in the US into the bank account of the RaaS provider. And then they will flow from the bank account of the RaaS provider to the bank account of the company in the payout country in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So it's two. There's 2 hops here.
2 steps. Yeah. Two hops. Yeah. Okay.
2 hops. Moving from the customer's bank account to the RaaS provider's bank account, and then moving from the RaaS provider's bank account to the company in the payout country's bank account.
Yeah.
Okay. This covers the fund flow of a transaction. On the data flow of the transaction, the same transaction, it's a bit different. So what's going to happen is data is going to be exchanged between the software of the company in the US and the RaaS provider in the US. So a transaction will flow from US company's software system to the RaaS provider software system. The RaaS provider will approve or reject that transaction. If the RaaS provider approves that transaction, the transaction is pushed back to the company in the US system. And then the company in the US system will push that transaction to their own company in the payout country to pay out that transaction.
Okay.
So it's 1, 2, 3. It's a 3-hop process.
Okay.
When it comes to a data flow of a transaction.
Yes, there's an additional step on the data side.
There is an additional step on the data side. By the way, this is just one solution that Remit One proposes, and how Remit One works with its RaaS provider partners.
Yeah.
But there are other solutions as well. But I think this is the most streamlined solution
that you've come across.
In our opinion, works best.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then moving on from this, so when in your experience working with banks and fintechs, established fintechs that have adopted the RaaS model, what would you say surprises the senior leaders of those companies once they've adopted the RaaS model?
So based on what we are seeing, based on what we've seen so far, is that they're very surprised in how smoothly this whole solution works.
Yeah.
How easy it is, actually.
Yeah, in comparison to the whole licensing burden that they would have had to do if they hadn't used this.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's the speed and the smoothness.
The speed, the smoothness, the efficiency, the time. You see, the thing is, well, time is covered in speed, but what one of the first things they tell us is, I wish, we had done this before.
Yeah.
Because remember, these companies or banks have been trying to get licensed for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and they still haven't been successful. Then comes along these RaaS solutions, right? And these RaaS solutions can get these banks set up within days, or within weeks, and they can be operational within a month because they're already licensed. You're dealing with licensed entities here. The bank doesn't need to get licensed. The MTO doesn't need to get licensed. They're going to ride on the license of the RaaS provider. So as long as you have the software infrastructure sorted, which it is, at least in the case of Remit One's clients and Remit One's RaaS partners, the pipe work has already been done. The rails have already been established. It's just a matter of signing a few contract signings between the RaaS provider and the company, which could be a bank or an MTO or a fintech, and off we go. We turn on the switch.
And they can test out that market.
They can test out that market. If they don't like that market, they can go to a new market.
Yeah, that's I guess that's the great thing about the RaaS model, right? Is it allows the banks and the strategic level executives, they're no longer going, oh, where can we get a license? Let's try there. They're actually saying, well, where are our customers and where do we want to be? And they're going down that route with RaaS instead. And they can test it out without the heavy upfront burden. And if it doesn't work out, then they can move on to a different market. And if it does work out, then maybe they consider at some point later down the line getting a license. Like you can test before they dive in like completely.
But I think so. If you take Europe as an example, that's 30 countries licensed coverage that you have. The US, you've got 50 states covered, right? You as a bank or an MTO or a fintech don't need to worry about that anymore. You already got the license coverage from the RaaS provider. And then, like, as you rightly said, you can try different countries within, so you can try within the 30 European countries, you can start with Italy, you can start with Spain. And then if they don't, you can turn on or off these corridors. And if Spain's not working, okay, try Portugal. You already have the license covered. And the same concept in the US. So it's very easy to do that. And this is what surprises the companies.
Yeah. And this is why we're seeing so much interest in it from banks in receiving markets, especially, isn't it? Yeah.
Large banks in receiving markets, they're the ones exhibiting the most interest in RaaS solutions that we're seeing, at least.
Yeah.
Of course, you also have a lot of fintech companies showing a lot of interest. But as I mentioned, fintechs, there are some challenges with fintechs when it, with regards to RaaS providers. You have to be a reasonably well-established fintech to be onboarded by a RaaS provider.
Yeah. Okay, so Amir, that leads on nicely actually to the next question, which is for, banks and established fintechs that are watching this podcast and thinking, where do we start? What advice would you give them?
That's a good question, Natalie. If I'm a fintech or a bank and I'm looking for a RaaS provider, it's difficult for me to find the right RaaS provider in Europe, for example. Because if I enter the terms RaaS provider in Europe, I'm going to get a plethora of entries which are unrelated to me. The best starting point is to find a software provider that claims to have a RaaS solution in place. Because this software provider that makes this claim has already laid the groundwork, done the groundwork, laid the rails, the payment, the connectivity, everything with the necessary RaaS provider. So you have a software provider and you have a RaaS provider. It's a software provider that acts as a glue between the fintech and bank and the RaaS provider. So for a fintech or a bank looking for a RaaS solution, they have to find a reliable software provider that claims to have a RaaS solution in place. For example, and that's obviously what Remit1 does, what our company does, right?
Yeah.
We do that. But I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible, but that's a fact. You have to go to a reliable brand that already has a relationship with the RaaS providers in the US, in the UK, in different parts of the world, in Europe, etc., etc.
Yeah, and obviously Remit1 has a vast amount of experience in the industry.
Yeah, of course.
And has vetted various different RaaS providers to work with, right? Yeah. So
we have vetted them and they have vetted us.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And in this equation, the RaaS solution is a win-win for all parties. It's a win-win for the bank or the MTO because, for obvious reasons, as we stated, they don't have to do the heavy lifting when it comes to regulation and compliance. That's not their headache anymore. They just focus on acquiring customers in the send market. It's a win-win situation for the RaaS provider because they don't have to spend money trying to seek out customers. The customers are being brought to the RaaS provider by the company. The RaaS provider is already, it's like a cash cow situation. They don't have to do anything and they're getting transaction flows because from the RaaS provider's perspective, the lead generation heavy lifting is being done by the company. And the company is benefiting because the company has a presence in the payout side where they already have an established customer base. And the software provider benefits because they're the ones benefiting from the transactional flows.
Yeah, and they underpin the whole
thing together.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Amit, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today. And I hope that everybody watching has found this topic interesting. And if you have any thoughts or comments, please do feel free to leave that in the comment section. Do subscribe so that you never miss an episode, and we'll see you next time.